Budget sleeping pads versus pro level sleeping pads. Are they really worth it? Let's talk about that. Alright guys, so the first thing I want to do is address the price point, because that is kind of the topic of the worth it or not budget versus pro. So let me reorganize these. I'm going to go most affordable to most expensive. So we will put this guy over here, this guy here. We'll do that. Alright, so we're now in order. I can't even put this in there. You know what? I'm going to remove that because it doesn't make any sense. And here's our category for most affordable to most expensive. So we have the thermarest ridge rest foil version. This pad is coming in at Canadian dollars. Everything I want to mention in Canadian dollars. This is right around $75, I believe, current value. So this is an excellent pad. I really enjoy it. So we'll go from about $75, and then we'll come into the Dear for Me sleeping pad. This right now, I've seen this between $50 and $30 on Amazon, depending on if it's on sale or regular price or what the deal is for the week. But between those price points, you can find this guy. Then we come into the klymit pad. So this is the insulated static V. This guy is right around $100, I believe. And then we have the static V. What is this? Static V Lux SL. This guy's a little bit more expensive. I want to say it's probably around the $175 range. So quite a jump from these. This one here, as I said, it doesn't exist. They made it and shipped it to me from klymit. There's not even the klymit branding on it. So I can't give you a price for that. So that's kind of in a category of its own. It doesn't even have a stuff sack. They sent it to me in their KSB down sleeping bag stuff sack. So kind of a mystery pad, but we'll get into that. And then we have the trusty thermarest NeoAir X-Therm. This is the max version, so it is a rectangle and it's large. This guy comes in at over $300 Canadian. Very, very pricey, but an absolute gem. So that's the price points on each of the products. Now I'm going to inflate each of these products, but first we might as well talk about the closed cell pad. It's the easiest to set up, so we'll get this set up on the table. And then we'll just go through each pad on the tabletop and talk about some pros and cons. Okay guys, so here we have the thermarest ridge rest pad all rolled out. Now like I said, this is the foil version, so one side has this reflective foil on it, the other side is green. This pad is available in two different types, the foil version or the all green foam version. This pad has an R value of 2.8. I'm not 100% of the weight, so you'll have to check on thermarest for the weight of it, but as you can see, it is not inflatable, so it is a nice hard foam pad. This is a bonus because if you're on a rocky surface or an area that may have the possibility of puncturing an air pad, these won't puncture. And this particular pad has already suffered a fair bit of damage from using it, and it still works absolutely perfectly. So our value of 2.8, as you can see, it is very thin. We're probably at about 1 centimeter, but it is sturdy. It does have these pockets built in, and these basically collect warm air, and it goes all down the pad, or the whole length has these little ridges. And it is a very, very nice warm pad. This is excellent for wintertime. It's excellent for summertime if you want to be traveling light and you just want to bring a little bit of comfort on the trail. This works really well. I personally use it in wintertime if I'm using a specific pad type on rocky surfaces and I don't want to puncture my pad. I will lay this down on the ground and then put my pad on top, my inflatable, and it works really well. Or I will do it vice versa. If I do find it is very, very cold out, I will use a inflatable and then I'll put this on top to help radiate the heat right back to me. It also offers a lot of structure. So this little bit of foam, putting this on top of an inflatable pad, offers a ton of rigidity and structure, and it takes a lot of the bounce out of the inflatable underneath. So this is really, really great for that. It also works good for outside of your tent. You can put it down on the ground, sit on it. You're not going to puncture it. It does radiate heat. I can feel the heat radiating back into my hand already, just holding it down. And it is just above freezing today. It's 2 degrees Celsius. And I can already feel the heat radiating back. So you can imagine how this could be very useful. So the cheapest, most affordable pad, the second most affordable pad that we have out here today, thermarest. So let's get this off to the side and let's bring in our first inflatable pad. Okay, so having a look at the Dear for Me pad. This guy is very, very small. And keep in mind, this video is not intended to be a review video. I just want to cover some of the form factors, some of the pros and cons to give you guys an idea, because I believe that is definitely going to be valuable information to define a pro and a con, or is it worth it or not. So I'm just going to touch on a few things here. But this is the Deer for Me pad. It is very small. It's also very lightweight. There is no R value that I could find on this sleeping pad, and I don't even believe there's insulation inside of it. I'm pretty sure it's just an air pad. I can't feel anything inside of there. So we'll get the stuff sack off to the side. It is a rather large pad, so I'm just going to unroll it and inflate it. Now, there is no pump sack with this air pad, so it being primarily a summertime pad, generally that's okay. In the wintertime, you really don't want to be blowing in moist air into your sleeping pad, because it's going to create ice crystals and it's going to damage whatever insulation's in there over time, and it won't be as warm as it's supposed to be. Now, holding this up to the light, I can confirm that there is no insulation inside of here. This particular one is brand new. I have about 3 or 4 of these, so I decided to bring a new one out today to show you guys. But I'm going to inflate it now. So it does have the valve up top. Like I said, there is no pump sack to this, so that is a little bit of a downfall. It looks massive right now, but as soon as you inflate it, it kind of shrinks up because it's no longer going to be flat. It's going to be 3-dimensional. So I'm going to inflate this, and then we'll have a closer look at it. Okay guys, so now that we've got the Deer for Me pad inflated, you can see what I mean about it kind of shrinking up as it expands. This pad is a quilted style pad, so it does have very large peaks and then deep valleys, so the high spots being the peaks, and then the little spots where it's basically a welded construction, that being the valley. This pad is extremely comfortable, I will say that. For being an affordable pad and it being so thin and lightweight fabric, it is actually very comfortable in warm weather when you're laying on it. Now, when you sit on it, you do hit bottom, as to be expected, but when you're laying on this, I weigh 185 pounds, and this pad supports me even on my side, on my hip. Somehow it works. I don't know how, because it looks like it shouldn't, but it being an affordable pad, it does have lighter weight fabric, so it is going to most likely fail before the other type of pads. It is still quite resilient though. I mean, like I said, I have more of these and I've used more of them outdoors. This one being brand new, there's no signs of any damage obviously, but they are thinner, they are light, so that could be a pro, but there is no insulation in this, so it being a cold weather pad, it's not going to be nice. Putting my hands on it, I can't feel the warmth like I did on the thermarest, so that might be a factor. But like I said, if you're going to be using it in summertime, this is not going to be a problem. If you're going to be using it in wintertime, I highly suggest at least adding another pad on top of this. The thermarest ridge rest would be great on top of this, but I still think it might be a little cold. So this pad does feature some snaps on the sides. Where are they? Right here. So there are these little black snaps, and those are permanently attached, and what you can do is snap 2 of these pads side by side together. You can even rotate the pad so the head end would be down opposite, and then you can actually click 2 of them together, which I've done because there are snaps on either side of the pad. So if you kind of flip the pad and rotate it, you can actually snap 2 pads together, giving you a double decker. Now obviously you can only do that so many times. If you go up 3 or 4 layers, you're going to be rocking and rolling. You're just going to roll right off the pad, but it is a handy feature to be able to snap them together. So I find a lot of these more affordable pads have a little bit more features. Some people call them gimmick features. I got to agree, some of them are gimmicky, but this one does feature the snaps to click together. So I actually find it quite useful when I'm in the tent and I bring my children with me. You can click 2 of these together, then you don't really have that hard ground in between the pads, and then you don't get the drifting of the pads either. But being in a small backpacking tent, you can't really get that drift because the pads are basically up against the side of the tent, so keep that in mind too. So this is a Deer for Me pad. I'm going to get this taken off the table, and we're going to bring in our first klymit pad. Okay, so coming into our first klymit pad, the first out of 3 that we have here today. This is the insulated static V. I will read off a few specs on here just to get it out of the way. It features an R value of 4.4, and it does have a picture of a snowflake saying cold weather, backpacking, tent camping, side sleepers, car and ATV camping. Inflates between 10 and 15 breaths. I have mixed feelings about klymit pads, and I've mentioned it in many videos in the past. and I've been putting off that video for quite a while. I'm actually going to be filming it today right after I'm done with this video, and it'll be uploaded at a different date because I do have mixed feelings about these pads, but not for this video. We'll save that for another video. Let's get into the stuff stack here. Now, I've had this particular pad for well over a year, and well, it's still working, so let's unroll it. And this is an insulated pad, so it does have insulation inside of it. They do offer these in different colors, mine being the orange one. So here, if you kind of look really closely, you can see the design of the Static V name. It is a V shape, and there is a welded construction through, so there are those peaks and valleys like we were talking about. That'll become more apparent once we actually inflate the pad. But I just want to point out, if you guys can really closely see these ridges, that's actually the insulation being compressed, and then when we inflate it, that kind of relaxes the fabric in between, and then the insulation can loft up. It is not down, it is synthetic insulation. So talking about the Klymit Static V pad, let me inflate it and we'll go over some of the pros and cons with this pad at this price point. Okay guys, so here we have the insulated Static V pad inflated, and I bet I am going to be extremely dizzy by the end of this video because I've still got more to inflate. Having said that, this pad does not come with a pump sack to inflate the pad, and there is no way to attach a pump sack to the pad due to its unique valve type. Now, I actually like the valve, and I'll show that in a little bit, but here, talking about the Static V name, now that I have it inflated, you can really see the Static V chambers is what they call them. And the idea behind this pad is that you're laying on the top insulated parts, which are the peaks, and then these really deep valleys. Basically, your sleeping bag fills into them, and it's supposed to give you added insulation throughout the whole pad. I'm going to save that part for the other video. So, talking about this, at its price point, it is actually quite a comfortable sleeping pad. The materials are much more durable. Now, the top is this orange material, the bottom is this gray. I don't know. I would assume that the gray material would be a little bit more durable than the top. You have to check on Klymit's website because, like I said, this isn't a review, but it is a very comfortable pad, I will say that, for laying on. It doesn't really work for sitting because with the peaks and the valleys, as soon as you sit on it, you're basically on the ground. But laying on it, it does work really well. It is lightweight, it is packable. It only takes 10 to 15 breaths. I believe it only took 9 to inflate this right now, a few seconds ago. And that's not too bad. So these are really good options for spring, fall. Like I said, it does have a claimed R value of 4.4, so it's advertised as a winter pad, but I'm going to get into that in the other video. The valve type. So let's talk about this valve type up here, because this being a lightweight backpacking pad, it's important to be able to inflate quickly and deflate quickly in bad weather, and this pad can do just that. It has this unique type of valve where if we open up the top, it has this inflate and deflate ring. There is a one-way valve on there, so as I blow into it, basically the air that I pressurize inside the pad can't come out, which is basically on every pad nowadays. But it does have this little press portion, so if I press that, the whole valve goes sideways and it quick deflates. Now keep in mind, it only took 9 breaths, and they're saying between 10 and 15 to inflate this. That's not a lot of air, so that means when you deflate it, it's going to be very, very quick to evacuate those 10 to 15 breaths of air that you put in there. And then you simply rotate it to the inflate portion. It is labeled, so it does say deflate and inflate. And then that let out probably about 50% of the air. This is how quick you can inflate it. So 4 breaths right there to bring it back up, which is pretty much in par with the 10 to bring it full. So we're right at about 50% empty. Now we're full again. So pros to it, yes, it can inflate very quickly. It can deflate very quickly, making it very fast on the trail when you get it. When you can either set up your sleeping pad because of bad weather or tear the sleeping pad down and the rest of your shelter and hit the trail very quickly without getting rained on or snowed on. So that is another option. Let's get the other pad set up. Okay guys, so having a look at our second klymit pad, I've kind of spared you the stuff sack portion of it because it's very similar to the other klymit pad. This pad offers a 6.5 R value, that's what they're claiming for the pad. So it is stepping up there into more of the winter cold weather area. The chambers are much larger, the insulation is thicker, I can see. The biggest thing between this pad and the other pad is the technique to inflate the pad and deflate the pad. So we do have two separate valves, one in, one out. These you can attach a pump sack to. I have personally not, but I've seen other people do that. I'm not sure which brand pump sacks they're actually attaching to these, which ones fit in is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not even sure if klymit has come out with a pump sack for these yet. Not terribly sure, but you can inflate with your mouth and then deflate on the other side just by pulling it. So I'm going to inflate this pad and then we'll have a look at it inflated. Okay guys, so now that I've got all of the air put into this pad, and I've got to say it took a lot more. So that would be the first noticeable con. It took longer to inflate, it took more air. I was actually dizzy while inflating it because there is no pump sack with this pad again. However, like I mentioned, the input valve does support one of those click type pump sacks and the little hand pumps. I'm just not sure which ones fit on it. You'll have to do some research on your own. Possibly klymit offers them now, I have no idea, but it does have a dedicated in and a dedicated out valve, meaning it can inflate rather quickly if you really want to put the air in quickly, but taking your time, it did take a little bit more time and a lot more air because the chambers are a lot bigger. This is a very comfortable pad, it being very thick, but again, if you sit on it, you are going to feel the ground underneath. It is a winter rated pad, just like the last klymit pad. This one claims to be 6.5 in R value. The last one was 4.4, so you can see the difference being the thickness in not only the pad, but the thickness of the insulation. Having a few built-in features of those side rails helping you stay on the pad. That is actually functional. I have noticed that sleeping on it times out in the snow. If the pad's kind of lopsided, this rail will actually kind of hold me on the pad. So it does work in that sense, and the output valve, the deflate, does deflate very quickly. So although it takes longer to inflate, you can deflate it rather quickly and get it back in the pack and get on the trail again. But not bad. The durability factor is there. It is a much more durable fabric, definitely more than the entry-level pads. So pretty decent. So let's get the other pad inflated. Now keep in mind, the next pad I'm going to bring out is going to look similar to the insulated Static V series. However, there is no name to it. There's not even the klymit branding on it. Let's just get it inflated and take a look at it. Okay, so here's a look at the final klymit pad that we have with us today. Before I inflate this, I just want to show the size of it. It is much larger in diameter than the other two were. I have a shock cord placed on the outside of it just to keep it bound up because, like I said, it didn't come with actual packaging for this particular pad, but the inflate and the deflate valve are, I believe there is two on it. Yeah, there is two. So it's basically, I think what they did is just made a larger SL model. So the previous pad we just looked at, I believe they just added more insulation to this pad and made it much thicker, and that was it. I'll explain more about this pad in my klymit sleeping pad video. Like I said, I'm going to film right after this, and you'll have to check that out to get the scoop on how I got this and the whole story behind it. So this pad, we can't really even say worth it or not because it's not even available. You can't even purchase this, and I don't really know why I'm showing it, but I think it'll kind of help show you a little bit of size maybe between sleeping pads. So if you are looking for a larger sleeping pad, or if you're looking for a thicker sleeping pad, this might be similar to an option that you're looking at. So I'm going to inflate this really quickly. It does take a ton of air. It takes a lot of time, but having both an in and out valve, it does deflate rather quickly. So let's just get this inflated and fly through this pad really quick and just kind of get it off table, and then we'll get on to the thermarest pad. Okay, so now that I've got the monster pad inflated, it took a lot more air. I am dizzy from inflating it, I will say that. Now, with this particular pad, putting my hands on it, I can feel a little bit of warmth, and it is cold out right now. Like, I'm actually starting to shiver, my hands are freezing, and putting my hands on it, holding it for a second, I can actually feel a bit of warmth building. So with this pad, the reason why I'm showing it is just to show size and kind of shape and whatnot. It does have the exact same design as the last klymit pad we looked at, except it's missing the klymit branding. Either side, no branding anywhere on this pad at all, but it does have the quick in and out valves, so you can quickly inflate it if you really want to introduce some air into it. It takes some time, it really does, but the deflate valve does dump the air very quickly. So this is a look at kind of a larger pad realistically, so showing you the thickness of this sleeping pad. It is thick. I know there are other pads on the market that do come as big as this, so that's kind of why I'm showing this really briefly. It's basically, I think all they did was added more insulation in the chamber compared to the SL that we were just looking at. So let's get this out of the way and let's get on with the thermarest pad. Okay, so now that we've got all those pads gone through, we have one last to talk about. This is a thermarest NeoAir X Therm. This is at the top of the expense list. So like I said, the price on this guy coming in at just around, and it's kind of around $300. I've seen it at $298 and I've seen it at about 320 Canadian dollars. So it is an expensive sleeping pad. It does come with a stuff sack and a compression sack. So this is actually a pump sack to inflate the pad. This is a winter rated sleeping pad. It has an R value of 6.9. Very important number, so remember that. But it does have an R value of 6.9. Like I said, mine is the max version, so it's a rectangle. I can feel the heat already putting my hands on it, and it's not even inflated. Wow. I've never felt that not inflated before. That's pretty cool. So, it kind of caught me off guard. Nice and warm. It is the rectangle version, so it is the max. It's an awesome pad. I love it. So let's get this guy unfolded. Again, this being at the top of the range, so we went through the budget, now we're at more of the pro version, or the pro end of the aspect. This pad is very lightweight, so you'll notice that it packed down very, very small. There is no actual insulation in this pad. It is actually a kind of a honeycomb of mylar blanket that is inside of here that is now flat, but as you inflate it, it actually gives structure to it, creating all these miniature triangles inside, and that helps both reflect the heat back up to your body on the top, and then underneath there's another chamber where it basically reflects the cold back down to the ground. So that's the kind of technology that you can expect getting into the higher end pads. Is there's a lot more research and development put into their products. Thermarest is known, so is klymit though. Klymit is known, but Thermarest I find has been around the block a little bit longer, and their products seem to be very, very durable. So this pad is extremely durable. I do still run it with a ground sheet underneath because I'm terrified to put a hole in it. It does come with a very, very nice patch kit. I've had no issues with it at all. Let's get it inflated and have a look at it. Oh yeah, nice and warm. So now that I've got the Thermarest pad all inflated and it is radiating heat right into my hands and arms, I love this thing. So this is going to be our pro pad for this video, and it is definitely a pro pad. So what sets this pad apart from more of the budget options is the price, definitely, but the reason why the price is high on this is it has an R value of 6.9. Now, we've already addressed it. We've had another pad on the table, R value 6.7. Well, I said that's what they claim. I don't believe it, and I'll explain that in my klymit specific video. But this pad has an R value of 6.9, and you'll notice that there are no V chambers. There's no really deep valley. So if the peak and the valley, there's a difference of maybe 3 to 4 millimeters from the peak down to the valley. The other pads had a peak and a valley, so the valley was actually about 1 millimeter of fabric, and the peak on the klymit, they look to be about 2 to 3 inches, so they're quite large. This pad is uniform all the way down. It is very, very comfortable. You can actually sit on it and you won't go through all the way. Of course, you're gonna kind of shrink it down, but laying on this pad is a treat, especially in the winter. Now, I've used this down to -26 with just a winter sleeping bag. That's it. Out in the basically in the forest, pad, ground sheet on the ground, of course, so I don't puncture the pad. And then the pad and the sleeping bag, of course, in good weather. And very, very cold out. I've stayed warm on this, absolutely. So, Pro pad, it's lightweight, it's incredibly warm, it is very durable. It does have the pump sack, so we've got the fitting up here, so you can use the pump sack. And the reason why that is important for winter camping is because you don't want to put in moisture from your lungs into the sleeping pad. Another thing is you want ambient air. So if it is warm during the day and you inflate the sleeping pad, later on in the evening when it gets colder, the pad will actually lose pressure. So you could take the pump sack. I usually keep this inside of my tent with me, and I'll use it for clothing and whatnot, but if it is warm during the day, I could grab the pump sack in the evening when I go to bed. I notice, geez, I might need a little bit more air. Hook the pump sack on and then introduce some more ambient air, and it stays inflated very, very well. So it's not like you have to roll over and put your mouth to the valve and introduce more moist air, creating ice crystals inside of the pad. So that's what you get with a Pro pad. Now, let's talk about worth it or not. Okay guys, so now that we've addressed what sleeping pads we have, what the price range is, what the R value range is, the durability, and we've talked about each pad individually in a number of ways, let's talk about budget versus Pro. Is it worth it or not? Well, starting off with the Pro pad, I've got to say, definitely worth it. The reason why is I could take this sleeping pad out in the winter and only need one sleeping pad, and I will be absolutely warm all night. So this works really well. It's also very lightweight, it's very durable, it has a pump sack that's included with it, a great patch kit, the features of it, the warranty on it, excellent. The price tag is not so excellent. So it being upwards of $300 does make it very expensive, but it is a sure bet. When you put $300, it's an investment in your gear. Okay, so this will work, it will keep me warm, absolutely happy. It's packable, lightweight, like I already said. But let's talk about why the price might be kind of a factor for some people, and how I think purchasing this right away, not even going through any of the other pads, grabbing this right away is going to be a better investment. I'll explain why. Okay guys, so now that we've got a look at all of the sleeping pads, the stack here of Klymits, we've got our Deer for Me on the bottom, we got our Pro pad on top, the thermarest, and then I've got the other thermarest here. So why would I say go for the Pro pad right off the bat? Your first purchase, buy the Pro pad. It's the most expensive pad out of what we've got here today. Why would it be smart? Well, coming down to the Deer for Me pad, it doesn't have an R value. There's no insulation. It's not going to be good for cold weather. It is lighter fabric, so it's most likely going to fail first. However, it does have a lot of pros going for it as well, with the snaps being able to couple them together. It does have a fast inflate, a fast deflate. It's affordable, it works in the summertime, it's lightweight. Definitely an option, but if you do buy this, you're only going to end up buying another pad for cold winters. So this pad right here is known by many backpackers to be a secondary pad. Most people bring an inflatable pad and then a closed cell pad, just in case your inflatable does develop a leak and you can't patch it. You're still going to have a pad. This is a very, very good option for that. Very durable. R value 2.8. You're still going to make it through a winter night, but you're not going to be that comfortable. If this goes flat on you, you're not going to make it through the night. You're going to be miserable. Minus 20, no pad, not going to be fun. So this pad being the secondary pad, it is worth it, definitely. I think everyone, if you're camping, backpacking, hiking, grab yourself a foil ridge rest. Absolutely worth it. You can even use this with the Pro pad if you really need to. If you're not warm enough, you can use this. So these are absolutely worth having. I definitely say grab one of these. Coming in at about $70 to $80. Moving on to the next pad. So if we went with the Klymit, the R value of 4.4, it might not be warm enough in winter at minus 20, minus 25 degrees Celsius. So again, you're going to be buying another pad to put on that pad. And then the same repeats itself. If you go to this pad and this pad, you might not be happy with the results and you might end up spending more money. So that's what I'm trying to say, is this pad being up in the $300 range, This pad being around the $200 range. Well, if I were to buy this pad and then I had to buy this, I've already spent the money on buying that. I could have just bought that right off the bat. And then I got my pump sack. It's a very, very warm pad. Wintertime, it's compressible. It's very packable, lightweight. It is absolutely awesome, and I love it. But like I said, you're already forking out the money for this, and then you're gonna purchase this again. So might be worth thinking about going for the Pro pad before going for the budget pad. Okay, so another thing to kind of think about when dealing with Pro pads and more budget-friendly pads, such as this guy here. These pads, if you do happen to damage them, they are going to be a lot more cost to replace, which is not fun. These close cell pads, which are fairly affordable, they are a little high priced in my opinion for what they are, but they last a lifetime if you treat them well. Whereas the inflatables, eventually during some point in time, they are going to fail and need to be replaced. This is going to be a lot more expensive to replace than one of the budget pads. So if you are having, you know, children on your sleeping pads or pets, a budget pad might be the best way to go. And even bring one of these to place on top of that just to give it a little bit of protection. It is going to be a little bit more weight, a little bit more bulk. These are fairly bulky. I mean, you can't make that any smaller than what it is. These pack down inside your pack, helping you have a very small pack size and weight. But these definitely have a place in your kit, definitely. So that's something to think about. Replacement cost. This is very expensive to replace. The budget pads, being the Klymit pads and the other pads, some of them are a little bit more affordable to replace, but you're going to be replacing them more often. Okay, so hopefully in this video we've gone through a few things that you may have already thought of, or some things that you may not have already thought of. The pros and cons between budget, non-budget, kind of up in the pro spectrum of things. If you have any questions or comments, drop it down in the comment section. But I will close with saying my personal opinion. Go with the Pro pad. I really do think it is worth going with the Pro pad before you even go with an entry-level pad, because you're going to end up spending more money. I know it's more affordable to grab an entry-level pad right away and then grab an entry-level tent and an entry-level stove and backpack, but I think we can all agree that eventually you upgrade to a different piece of gear. Now, if you stop and think of all the money that you spent on entry-level gear and then turned around and went out and bought the pro level gear, how much weight savings you've got going this route, how happy you are knowing that you've got what you really wanted instead of going with something that will work for now but it's going to fail. You're going to dump a lot more money into entry-level gear than you would over time than going with the pro gear right off the bat. So to wrap things up, I do highly think that it is worth it to go with the Pro version pad. Whatever the brand is, this was my particular pick, being the Thermarest. I really enjoy it. It works absolutely perfect for me. There are other brands out there that are in the Pro category as well. So I'm definitely interested to hear what you guys think. Do you think it's worth going with a Pro pad right away? Or do you think it's actually worth going with some of the budget pads and then building your way up to a Pro pad? With all the pros and cons we went through, cost I think is being the biggest factor that a lot of people have, is stomaching the cost of spending around $300 or more on a sleeping pad. Sleeping bags are also very expensive, tents. So would you go with a budget sleeping pad or would you go with a Pro pad? Is it worth it or not? Let me know in the comment section.